Robert Downey Jr. noticed a homeless mother living in her car, her baby bundled in mismatched blankets, struggling to stay warm on a cold night. The exhaustion on her face was unmistakable, and the baby's faint cries echoed in the stillness of the parking lot. What Robert did next wouldn't just change their lives, it would leave you speechless. Before we continue, let us know where you're watching from, and if you enjoy stories like this, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow, we've got another moving story coming your way. That evening, Robert had just stepped out of a local supermarket, holding 2 bags in one hand. The air was crisp, and a gentle breeze stirred the trees around the lot. He adjusted the hood of his jacket and scanned the area, a habit he'd developed over years of staying grounded amidst fame. It had been a long but fulfilling day. Filming had wrapped earlier than expected, and Robert took the opportunity to run some errands, grab dinner, enjoy a quiet moment of normalcy. As he made his way across the parking lot, something caught his eye. In a far-off corner sat an old, worn-out car. Its windows were fogged, and clothes hung inside swayed faintly with the wind. He paused. Something didn't feel right. Just then, he saw a woman nearby, pushing stray shopping carts to the side. Her clothes were worn. She glanced around anxiously. Exhaustion etched into every movement. She looked like she was trying to disappear, blending in while pushing herself through something she clearly didn't deserve. Robert's eyes drifted back to the car. The connection became clearer. She kept walking back to it, like it was her lifeline. His heart sank. Was she living in that car? Without hesitation, Robert started walking toward her, calmly, carefully, not wanting to startle her. "Hi," he said gently, voice low and warm. She froze mid-motion, gripping the handle of the cart tighter. Her eyes met his briefly, then darted away. "Are you okay? Is there anything I can do to help?" he asked, keeping a respectful distance. "No, I'm fine, thank you," she replied quickly, her tone polite but guarded. She stepped back, clearly wanting the conversation to end. Robert nodded. "Okay, I understand. If you need anything, I'll be around." She didn't answer. Instead, she turned and walked briskly to the car, opened the door, and got in. Robert stood quietly watching as she settled into the driver's seat. Then, through the fogged-up glass, he saw it. A small baby nestled in her arms, shifting slightly. The sight hit him hard. He blinked, trying to process what he was seeing. His chest tightened. He couldn't just walk away. As she adjusted the baby, Robert turned and walked to his own car, but the image stayed with him. Before starting the engine, he looked back one last time. The silhouette of the baby was still there. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting the weight of the situation settle in. One thing was clear. He couldn't ignore what he had just witnessed. The next morning, Robert Downey Jr. returned to the same supermarket. The events of the previous evening were still fresh in his mind. The woman, the car, the baby, the quiet desperation. He parked in the same spot and scanned the lot. The old car was still there in the exact same corner. Up ahead, he saw her again. She was holding a plastic grocery bag, walking toward the car. He watched quietly as she placed it in the back seat and climbed inside. That's when Robert stepped out, holding 2 things he had brought from home, a bottle of mineral water and a brand new blanket, still folded in its packaging. He knew any gesture would have to be discreet. The last thing he wanted was to make her feel exposed to the cold morning air. Robert calmly walked up to the old car and gently placed the blanket and bottle of water on the hood, making sure they were clearly visible. He didn't say a word, just turned and walked back to his own vehicle, settling into the driver's seat. A few minutes passed. Then the car door creaked open. The woman cautiously peeked out, eyes locking on the items sitting on the hood. Her expression shifted, and she looked around the lot, trying to figure out who had left them. Robert remained still. He didn't want to be seen, not yet. He simply waited, quietly hoping she'd take the supplies, before her courage faded. After a moment of hesitation, she stepped forward and grabbed the bottle and the blanket. Robert noticed her lips move slightly, as if she murmured something, maybe a quiet "thank you," but he couldn't hear it. She slipped back into the car and shut the door quickly, clutching the items. Robert started his car and drove away, his heart a mix of relief and frustration. He had done something, yes, but it still didn't feel like enough. The next day, Robert returned to the same parking lot. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was more he needed to do, more he needed to understand. He parked again near the edge of the lot and saw her. She was pushing carts once more, her shoulders hunched in exhaustion. He waited until she moved near her car, then quietly approached. "Hey," he said gently, his voice soft like a whisper. She stopped, startled again, uncomfortable. "I'm the guy who left the water and the blanket yesterday," he added. I hope I didn't make you uncomfortable." She looked at him with the same tired eyes, but now there was something new there, curiosity. "You? Why?" she asked, her voice quick, almost defensive. "I saw you here. Figured you might need them, that's all," Robert replied with a small shrug. He wasn't trying to convince her of anything. He knew better than to push too hard. "I get it if you don't want to talk to me. I don't want to invade your space." She stayed quiet for a long second, then softly, "Thank you for the water and the blanket." Her words were cautious, like each one carried the weight of trust she couldn't afford to give. Robert nodded, his tone respectful. "I just want to help, if you'll let me. And if you won't, that's okay too. Sometimes accepting help isn't weakness. It's just another step forward." She didn't reply directly, but her body language softened. The wall she had up seemed to drop, just slightly. He didn't press her. He turned, ready to leave again when he heard it, the soft, muffled cry of a baby coming from inside the car. He stopped. The woman rushed to the car, opened the door, and began rocking her baby gently. Robert stood a few feet back, unsure for a moment. Then quietly he asked, "Do you need anything for him? Formula? Diapers? Anything at all?" She looked back at him. Her eyes were tired. So tired. She opened her mouth to refuse, but something in her changed. It was the mother in her, the protector. I need milk," she said, almost whispering. Robert nodded instantly. He didn't ask anything more. "Wait here, I'll be right back." He turned and walked swiftly into the supermarket. When he returned, he was carrying a small bag. Inside, powdered formula, diapers, and a pack of baby wipes. He handed it to her gently. She accepted it, but her suspicion returned. Still, her hands clutched the bag like it held treasure. She murmured a quiet, barely audible, "Thank you." Robert stood beside her car as she adjusted the baby inside. "I know it's not my place," he said softly, "but if you need anything else, I'll be around." She hesitated, eyes still on her child. They weren't supposed to be like this," she said, her voice low, almost a whisper. But the pain in that one sentence hit hard. It wasn't just a comment, it was a silent cry for help. Robert felt it deeply. He knew then this story wasn't over, and he was ready for whatever came next. The next day, he returned again. Same parking lot, same car. But something about her felt different. She was standing outside the vehicle this time, holding her baby in her arms. Her gaze was distant, resigned, but not as guarded. Robert approached slowly, respectfully. "Hey," he said with a small smile. She looked up, surprised, but not defensive. "You came back," she said. Her tone carried curiosity now, not fear. "I said I'd be around," Robert replied. "I hope yesterday didn't make you feel pressured." She shook her head gently. "No, it was kind of you." He took a deep breath. It felt like the right moment. "Mind if I sit?" he asked, nodding toward the curb near her car. She hesitated but nodded. Robert sat down on the curb, resting his arms on his knees, allowing a brief silence to settle before he spoke. "Again, you don't have to tell me anything you're not comfortable sharing," he said gently. "But can I ask your name?" The woman looked at him for a moment, her guard still partially raised before answering. "Emily." "Nice to meet you, Emily," Robert replied sincerely. "And the little one, what's his name?" She glanced down at the baby, who now seemed calmer in her arms. "Oliver," Robert smiled. "Oliver is a strong name. I like it." The compliment seemed to thaw something in Emily. She relaxed slightly, though she still held on to a cautious posture. Robert knew better than to push. Instead, he shared something of his own. "You know, I've been through some tough things too," he began, his voice low and thoughtful. "I've lost people who were my whole world. There were moments I didn't think I could keep going, but somehow I did. Not alone, I had help. And sometimes, accepting help is what saves us." Emily listened silently, her eyes fixed on the baby in her lap. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "Sometimes it feels like I'm alone in the world, and no one cares." Robert shook his head slowly. "I care," he said firmly, "and I know we don't know each other well, but I want to help, if you'll let me." She didn't respond immediately, but her expression softened, just a little, a crack in the walls she'd built. Later that night, while Emily and Oliver slept in the car, Robert returned quietly to the parking lot. He carried several bags, baby food, hygiene supplies, diapers, a couple of toys. He placed everything gently by the car door, along with a handwritten note. No strings attached, just care. The next morning, Emily stirred awake and saw the bags. Her hands trembled as she picked up one of the toys, her eyes welling with tears. It was a simple gesture, but to her, it felt immense. Part of her wanted to reject it all, to preserve the little control she felt she had left. But another part of her knew this was what she needed. She looked around, but Robert was gone. Yet something inside her had begun to shift. The following day, when Robert returned, Emily stepped out of the car and called out before he could approach. "Thank you," she said, holding up one of the bags. "This means a lot." Robert smiled. "I'm glad it helped. And if you need anything else, just let me know." Emily hesitated, then added, "I don't usually talk about this, but..." She took a deep breath, summoning courage. "I lost everything. My husband, my home, my life. And what happened after? It's still hard to believe." Robert looked her in the eyes, serious, but full of empathy. He could feel she was standing at the edge of something huge, something that might begin her healing. "You don't have to rush," he said quietly. "I'll be here whenever you're ready." Emily swallowed hard and nodded. For the first time in a long time, she felt like someone was truly willing to listen. She looked down at Oliver, then back at Robert. "It all started when he died. My husband, Liam," she began, voice trembling. "After that, everything fell apart. And then something happened, something no one would believe." Robert leaned forward slightly, his face calm but attentive. He knew her story was just beginning, and it would be deeper and more painful than he had imagined. Emily clutched Oliver tightly, her gaze drifting far into the distance like she was reliving every memory. "It was about a year ago," she continued. "Liam died in a car accident. He was coming home from work, just a regular night. Or it should have been." Robert stayed silent, letting her speak. "When the police knocked on my door, it was like the ground disappeared beneath me. I couldn't even process what they were saying, just he didn't suffer, but that didn't matter. He was gone." She wiped away a stubborn tear. "After that, everything turned upside down. The life insurance wasn't enough. The bills started piling up. And Liam's parents," she trailed off, her expression hardening. "They said I wasn't capable of taking care of Oliver." Robert's brow furrowed. "They tried to take your son?" Emily nodded slowly. "They filed for custody, said I was emotionally unstable, and maybe I was broken, but everything I did was for Oliver." She looked down at her baby, gently brushing her fingers across his tiny cheek. "I couldn't afford a decent lawyer, and when it looked like things were turning against me, I packed up the car, took what little savings I had left, and I ran." "To another state?" she whispered. "To here. I thought it would be temporary, that I'd find a job and get back on my feet." Emily continued, her voice filled with bitterness. "I found a job at a cafe. I started saving money, and for a while it felt like I was making progress. But then a customer started harassing me. He'd say disgusting things. One day I snapped and yelled at him. I tried explaining to the manager, but he didn't care. He fired me." Robert closed his eyes for a brief moment, a knot forming in his stomach. He could see the pain in Emily's eyes, each word peeling back another layer of the weight she carried. "With the money running out, I got evicted. The car became our home." She gave a bitter, hollow laugh. "I tried looking for work, but it's hard with Oliver always with me. No one wants to hire a mother they think isn't dedicated enough." She paused, then continued, her voice faltering. "Since then, I've been living like this. Every day, just trying to survive. Picking up odd jobs, pushing carts, hoping no one notices we're living here." She finally stopped, her eyes filled with tears. "I know it's wrong. He deserves more. I should be doing better. But I'm just so tired." Robert felt his chest tighten. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, choosing his words carefully. "Emily," he said gently, "you're fighting a battle no one should have to face alone. And no one can blame you for that." She lifted her eyes to his, disbelief written across her face. "But I should have figured it out. You're trying," Robert interrupted softly but firmly. "That's more than most people would do. You're fighting for Oliver every single day. That's not failure, that's strength." Emily stared at him, letting the words sink in. Finally she murmured, "What do I do now? I'm at the end of my rope." Robert looked her in the eyes, his expression filled with quiet determination. "We'll figure it out. Together. I promise. Wait here, I'll be back in 20 minutes. Before she could respond, Robert stood up and walked toward his car. He had a plan, and he wasn't leaving her in that parking lot to face another night like this. As Robert drove away, Emily watched the taillights fade in the rearview mirror. Her heart was torn, caught between a cautious hope and the deep-rooted fear life had etched into her. Inside his car, Robert grabbed his phone and started making calls. He moved quickly, pulling favors, finding resources. Whatever came next, it had to be the beginning of a real change. Emily needed more than kindness. She needed stability, safety, a chance. 40 minutes later, Robert's car pulled back into the supermarket lot. Emily, still sitting in the old sedan with Oliver sleeping in her arms, looked up at the sound of his engine. Her eyes held a flicker of skepticism, but also, unmistakably, a spark of curiosity. Robert stepped out of his car and walked toward her, holding a small envelope in his hand. He stopped a respectful distance from the driver's door. "I got a room for you and Oliver," he said. "It's a simple motel, but it's clean and safe. You can rest there tonight. Tomorrow, we'll figure out the next step." Emily stepped out, holding Oliver close. Her eyes moved between the envelope and Robert's face, clearly conflicted. "I can't accept this. I don't want charity." "This isn't charity," Robert said, gently but with firmness. "It's help. We all need help sometimes. Please, let me do this for you." She hesitated. The exhaustion was plain in her posture. Finally, she extended her hand and took the envelope. Inside was a motel room key, a note with the address and some cash for food. Emily swallowed hard. Her voice came out as a whisper. "Thank you." Robert smiled softly. "You're welcome. I'll drive behind you just to make sure you get there safely." The motel room was modest, but to Emily it felt like a palace. A warm bed, clean sheets, a small private bathroom. The soft yellow light of the bedside lamp cast a peaceful glow across the room. She gently laid Oliver on the bed and tucked him in. For the first time in weeks, he slept soundly, free from the discomfort and noise of the car. Emily sat on the edge of the bed, staring at her son. Her eyes welled up until the tears finally fell, freely, uncontrollably. For the first time in a long time, she felt a thread of safety, a sliver of hope. She glanced down at the note tucked in with the key. Robert's handwriting was simple but powerful. "You're not alone. We're in this together." Outside, Robert sat in his car for a while longer, staring up at the night sky. The city lights blurred the stars, but a few still shone through. He took a deep breath, thinking about everything Emily had been through, her strength, her story, and how, starting tonight, he was going to help rewrite the next chapter. Weeks passed, and Emily slowly began to rebuild her life. Each day brought a little more stability, a little more hope. With help from the community center and the consistent support of Robert Downey Jr., Emily had secured a part-time job as a receptionist at a small office. The team welcomed her warmly, offering her space to grow without judgment. It wasn't glamorous, but it was hers, something she had earned. Oliver, too, was thriving. The community center provided a safe daycare where he could play, learn, and laugh. For the first time in what felt like forever, Emily felt like a real mom again, not just surviving, but living. Robert, true to his word, never disappeared. He checked in regularly, sometimes stopping by with a toy for Oliver, or grabbing coffee with Emily between her shifts. He never made it feel like charity. Instead, he acted like a friend, funny, grounded, and endlessly supportive. One rainy afternoon, he invited her to meet him at a cozy cafe down the street. When she walked in, soaked but smiling with Oliver in tow, Robert looked up from his cappuccino and grinned. "Hey, sunshine," he joked. "Rain's got nothing on you." Emily laughed as she slid into the seat across from him. "You're surprisingly cheerful for someone famous sitting in a regular cafe," he shrugged. "Well, fame doesn't make you immune to humanity. Besides, this is real. I like real." They chatted over warm drinks while Oliver dozed in his stroller. Emily shared how her job was going, her hopes for the future, and even her fears. Robert listened, nodding thoughtfully. "Can I ask you something?" she said at one point, her voice soft. "Shoot!" he replied, leaning in. "Why me? Why did you help me?" Robert paused. "Because I've been there, in different ways. I've made comebacks. And I know that all someone needs sometimes is for someone else to believe in them. I saw you weren't broken, you were just stuck. And I figured if I can help unstick someone, why wouldn't I?" Emily looked down, moved. "I don't know if I'll ever be able to repay you." Robert smiled gently. "You already are. Every step forward you take with Oliver, that's the return." Back at the community center, Emily's room was still modest, but now filled with touches of warmth. Oliver's drawings on the wall, a donated bookshelf with children's books, and a tiny plant she'd named Tony. It wasn't permanent, but it felt safe. That evening, as she tucked Oliver in, she whispered, "We're going to be okay." And for the first time in years, she believed it. Outside, Robert stood with the community centre director once more. "She's doing well," he said, watching the light spill from the windows. "She is," the director nodded. "She's coming back to life." Robert exhaled deeply, a small smile on his lips. That's all I ever wanted to see. She didn't need saving, she just needed a chance. As he walked back to his car, umbrella in hand, he glanced back one last time. It wasn't the end of the journey, but for Emily and Oliver, it was a beautiful beginning. It wasn't just a job, it was a lifeline. Emily's new position as a receptionist gave her more than just an income. It offered her routine, dignity, and a sense of identity beyond being a mother in crisis. Each morning she dressed with care, walked Oliver to daycare, and arrived at the office with a growing sense of pride. On her first day, Robert walked her to the door. "This is just the beginning," he said, his voice warm with encouragement. "You're going to crush it." Emily smiled nervously and stepped inside. The team welcomed her kindly, aware of her background, but treating her with the respect of any other colleague. Her manager was patient, showing her the ropes with quiet confidence. As the days turned into weeks, Emily's own confidence grew. Small compliments on her organization, her phone etiquette, her kindness, felt like rays of light after a long darkness. Each evening she returned home, exhausted but fulfilled, often greeted by Oliver's joyful laugh and outstretched arms. One evening over dinner, she opened up to Robert about a difficult decision. She had agreed to let her in-laws visit Oliver on her terms. "It felt right," she said. "I wanted to give them a chance, not for me, but for Oliver." Robert looked at her impressed. "That's not just brave, that's healing. You're the one in control now." Emily nodded. For once, she felt in control. One sunny afternoon, they met at a small cafe, their usual spot. Over coffee and light conversation, Emily looked at Robert with a determined expression. "I want you to know," she said, "one day I will pay you back. For everything." Robert leaned back and smiled. "Emily, you already are. Every step you take, every win, big or small, it's more than enough. I didn't help you to get something in return." Her smile widened, but her eyes held a new kind of fire. "Even so, I want to help others one day, just like you helped me. I want to be that person for someone else." Robert nodded, clearly moved. "That's the best way to pay it forward. Turn your pain into purpose. Your story's already powerful. One day, it could be someone's reason to keep going." That night, as Robert drove home, he glanced up at the stars through his windshield. Despite all he'd achieved in his career, it was this, watching someone rise from the ashes, that filled him with the deepest sense of purpose. Emily hadn't just changed her life, she'd changed his. And in her small apartment, Emily tucked Oliver into bed and lingered a little longer by his side. She felt tired, yes, but no longer defeated. The road ahead would still have hills to climb, but for the first time in years, she felt ready. She stood at the window for a while, watching the city lights blink against the night. Somewhere out there, another Emily was struggling, and one day she would be the hand that reached out. Her story wasn't over, not even close.